49ers had an injury scare with Ricky Pearsall, but he got right back out there and scored a touchdown just 3 plays later. They were looking at Ricky's shoulder at practice today after he made a great off-schedule catch from Brock Purdy. They tested the shoulder, and he was chomping at the bit to get back out there. He did, and all was well for San Francisco. Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle making big plays on the receiving end of Brock Purdy passes. That again was a theme today. Christian with a great one-handed catch in the red zone. 49ers just ran a very long practice as expected, a couple days ahead of the game against the Chargers here at Levi's Stadium, where they're getting everything ready. Helmet update for the 49ers. No Jacob Cowing at practice today. Might have been a lower body injury sustained at practice yesterday. We probably won't get an update from Kyle Shanahan until a little bit later this week, so we'll have that for you. I'll say that Robbie Chosen, don't sleep on him, 32-year-old veteran receiver making a lot of plays for the 49ers. Definitely looks explosive. More on that in a bit. Why don't we take a look at the highlights during practice today? That's Michael Dunn, number 60, new 49ers offensive guard. Played about 100 snaps for the Browns last year. Was decent. He's obviously there for depth while the 49ers deal with injuries to Ben Barch, who's working off on the side with the elbow brace today, and Dominic Pooney, who's going to be out for a few weeks. Mr. Purdy himself with Christian McCaffrey and Ricky Pearsall in the background. Look at George Kittle and Nick Bosa. This is during that special teams period, 10 minutes early in practice, where guys can do some individual work or they can check in on some of their friends. Bosa, Kittle joking around, and then Bosa's going to walk right here in front of all the offensive linemen doing drills. I just thought that this was a good shot, so we're going to include it in our 90-second highlight package. There are all the linemen, Colton McKivitz. You can see Matt Hennessy, 61. Drake Nugent is 66, working with Jake Brendel, the center. By the way, Michael Dunn, the new offensive lineman, he has played some center for the 49ers, or he has played some center in the past for the Browns. That's where all of his snaps have come. That's Malik Knowles, 82, wide receiver. 49ers signed him today. He was with the team earlier in training camp. And then a look at the defensive lineman just to prove that Nick Bosa did indeed do some work. He wasn't just joking around with George Kittle. 49ers had some intense D-line drills today. I think that it just matched with the pace of practice today. This was a grueling practice. It's fairly warm out here in Santa Clara. 49ers like the Thursday sessions to be the longest. Now this is a Wednesday, I get it, but it effectively is a Thursday practice. I said this is dress rehearsal week for San Francisco. That means that game on Saturday, you run it like a Sunday game, but Thursday practice is today's in the progression. Now, it still is a bit of a training camp hybrid, even though it technically isn't camp anymore. And the 49ers might be making up for some lost time with some of these injuries. They ran one-on-ones today for the first time in over a week. So the D linemen versus the O linemen, receivers against cornerbacks, and then linebackers and safeties against running backs and tight ends. And one of the reps that stood out to me was Robbie Chosen beating Deommodore Lenoir deep. Now, Chosen was with this team from August 12th to 27th last year, but we didn't see him do all too much. Definitely not in team drills. He might have had a few one-on-one wins. Today, he caught a crosser in practice that reminded me a lot of the crosser that he caught late in the game from Carter Bradley that set the 49ers up for that comeback against the Raiders on Saturday. And then he beat Lenoir, this was before, he beat Lenoir in the one-on-one rep, and that is obviously the 49ers' top corner. Now, Lenoir has been dealing with a hip issue throughout the course of this training camp. I wonder if he is 100%. That's obviously something to keep track of, but it is worth noting that Robbie Chosen has been winning more than just that one-on-one matchup with Deommodore Lenoir. He has been beating other 49ers defensive backs during this training camp at a much higher rate than he did last year. Formerly known as Robbie Anderson, back when his name was Anderson, there was a 1,000-yard receiving season with the Carolina Panthers. 4.3 speed coming out of Temple. Robbie Chosen is 32 years old now, but Kyle Shanahan has gone out and said that he's got a much better chance to make the roster this year because of the 49ers receiver situation and because he's in better shape than he was in 2024 when the 49ers offered him a practice squad spot. So we're less than a week away from the cut down, and a lot of Tetris maneuvering is going to have to happen. If you want a 49ers 53-man roster video, like something that goes really in depth about the procedures that you'll likely see the 49ers make as far as saving roster spots, stash into the practice squad, PUP, NFI, IR, give me a thumbs up in the comment section here, and I will deliver with the most in-depth 49ers 53-man cut-down roster strategy video that there is. But you've got to give me that thumbs up. One of the players that I really wonder about is Jacob Cowing, because he's missed most of training camp because he got hurt during the warm-ups for practice 1, and it appears that an injury has returned because he wasn't at practice today. So how serious is this Jacob Cowing injury? What will the 49ers do with him at the cut down? I mean, there's going to be some drama here over the course of the next week. And I know a lot of people are talking about a potential wide receiver trade. We know that the 49ers are interested in one. We know that they put an offer out to the Texans for John Mechie III, but we also know that the offer from the Philadelphia Eagles was greater. So it's all stuff that we're going to be covering in depth over the course of the next several days. All right, let's get into everything that happened today at 49ers practice. The very first throw from Brock Purdy, he went deep for Ricky Pearsall, and it was a corner route, great rope throw from Brock Purdy, but even better defense from Marquise Siegel, the 49ers rookie safety, made one hell of a play, knocked the ball away. We've seen a lot of Siegel's speed and tackling ability so far in camp and preseason. Coverage plays, though, those are a little harder to come by, especially on a throw that was that good, and it was on time to Ricky Pearsall, but Siegel showed off his range and his ability to play the ball. And we saw a lot of that on tape at Kansas State. 49ers, I think, got a real gem of a safety in Marquise Siegel. He's taken those first team reps today with Jair Brown. Jason Pinnock back at practice, but not in team drills yet. So keep an eye out there because, you know, we talked about a potential safety surplus at some point for the 49ers. And we talked about, okay, maybe Jair Brown is somebody they can shop around. But if Jason Pinnock is not back at practice, that's something the 49ers can't seriously consider at the current moment because Brown has taken those first team reps next to Marquise Siegel. Early on in practice, Christian McCaffrey dropped a pass on a little short crosser. But, you know, I just wrote that down in my notebook and I said, he's going to have a really good practice because he's going to be pissed that he dropped a pass. You rarely see it from Christian, and I guess I was right. I don't think it was hard to be right in this instance. Christian just went off at practice today, had a house call touchdown run to the left side, would have been an 80-yard touchdown for the 49ers, had that one-handed catch that I talked about, had a few receptions out of the backfield. He is locked, loaded, ready to go. I think between McCaffrey and Kittle, you've had the two best performers at the skill positions here in 49ers training camp. We've talked a lot about how Brock Purdy has performed. Well, outside of quarterback, if you want to look at the guys making plays and on the receiving end of these Purdy passes, it's been McCaffrey, it's been Kittle. Kittle had a catch and run today where he sprinted down the sideline, probably would have been a touchdown in a real game as well. You know, just in general, I keep on saying this, and I have to repeat it. I think the 49ers are going to have to win some shootouts, especially early this year. I think that's the formula. I think the star players have to carry them on offense. There's a reason why they're looking to fill out that receiver room right now with all of the shortfalls that they're going to have early in this season at wide receiver. They've obviously got to take care of the offensive line, where the injuries are right now at those guard positions. But if they can keep Purdy decently protected and get him a chance to get the football out to some of the stars who are available, I think this offense can produce, and it's going to need to produce with a defense that is obviously learning on the fly. Speaking of that defense, Tatum Bethune has been making some plays. He's the one that sent Ashton Genty into the injury tent the other day. Genty was running over 49ers, and then I think Tatum Bethune was able to stem the tide of that in the game against the Raiders. Robert Saleh today was talking about the second-year linebacker out of Florida State, and he compared him to Dre Greenlaw in that Dre didn't run a fast 40 at all. Neither did Tatum Bethune. It was probably, I'm guessing, a 4.7. Don't think it was as slow as a 4.8, but it wasn't fast. It wasn't a 4.5 40, but he plays much faster. And one, that is play intelligence. You're mature. You know when to press the gas. You know when to hold off, and then that way you're able to to deliver faster actual play speed. So 40 speed doesn't necessarily correlate with it, but 2, it just shows the guy's hustle. And Greenlaw was the fastest defender on Arkansas's defense back in college when you measured it by the miles per hour with the GPS chip. I'm going to call up Florida State and try to find out where Tatum Bethune ranked as far as the MPH goes, because I think that we've seen some signs already here on the practice field that and on the preseason playing field that it's a very, very good number for the 49ers. Nate Sudfeld finally got some snaps today. Yesterday, after he had signed, it was all Carter Bradley for the 49ers second team. Today, Nate Sudfeld got some work for San Francisco. It didn't look like the timing was fully there. He missed Pearsall on an out pattern, which was definitely timing-based. Fluttered an interception up there to Jalen Graham. And then later on in practice today, there was another interception. This one was D. Winters. It was hard to tell who tipped the ball, but it was definitely a defensive lineman tipping the ball. And Nate Sudfeld had 2 interceptions for San Francisco today. I've got Kittle written here so many times. I've got Isaac Guerendo catching the football out of the backfield. 49ers obviously love to see that. They're starting to feel a little bit more depth in their running back room with that return. Jordan James should be back soon for San Francisco. So that room is mending up a bit. But today they did have to put Corey Kiner on the waiver wire. He waived with an injury designation. Now Kiner, if he isn't claimed over the course of today and then up to the deadline tomorrow, he'll revert back to injured reserve for the 49ers, and then they'll have to make a decision. Do you just stash him there for the entire year? Do you reach an injury settlement with him? And then there are certain rules for his ability to potentially re-sign with the 49ers after an injury settlement. There's a period of time that the 2 sides will have to agree on. So the high ankle sprain for Corey Kiner, an unfortunate development. And the 49ers are treasuring roster room as they should right now. So he is waived with that injury designation. I'll update you further on how that progresses tomorrow. The Robbie Chosen crosser. I mean, he's got long strides. 4.3 coming out of Temple. He can really, really move with those long strides. Well, the crossers are going to be good, and I think sometimes the go balls are going to be good for somebody like Robbie Chosen. I think the biggest question is, even though he's tall, he is rather slender, right? Slight of frame. So I don't know if Robbie Chosen is going to be the best run blocker for the 49ers, but when you talk about somebody like him, somebody like Jacob Cowing hurt now, somebody like Jordan Watkins out with the high ankle sprain, you're talking about guys who are burners, who the 49ers hope might be able to stretch the defense a bit to help some of the separation issues that this team ran into last year. And I think that Robbie Chosen might be able to give the 49ers some quality snaps in that regard. Defense today ran a cornerback rotation again. So what you saw is Lenore and Renardo Green, who was back with a splash yesterday. But the first team defense would also see Dallas Flowers and Darrell Luter Jr. come in. Also, they saw some Saran Neal as the backup nickelback come in. And no Upton Stout at practice, so they're still waiting through that calf issue for Upton Stouts. That means that Chase Lucas is the 49ers' top nickelback right now. And, I mean, Lucas has deserved to be the top nickelback, regardless of whether or not Upton Stout is out on that field. Chase Lucas has been making some plays, and I think it gives the 49ers a little bit of breathing room at that nickel spot. But you can tell that they're aggressively rotating the corners in, A, to keep Lenore and Renardo Green fresh. Both of those guys have dealt with injury situations over this camp. And B, to continue testing out who's going to be that third outside cornerback. I do think that Darrell Luter Jr. is in the lead. Blitz beater to George Kittle's the next thing on my notes. They started running really specific situational stuff, which we expected. Given this is dress rehearsal week, hybridized with training camp style of practice. So a lot of 2-minute stuff. Purdy was moving the 49ers right down the field in the 2-minute stuff. Although Warner almost had an interception. Warner leapt up in the air, couldn't quite get it. A couple plays before that, they ran a situational blitz beater, and it was Purdy to George Kittle for a big gain. Then when they actually got into the 2-minute stuff, it was Christian McCaffrey ripping off that house call touchdown run that I told you about at the beginning of the show. The Pearsall injury scare was a really interesting play because Purdy was moving around a little bit in the backfield. He got away from the pass rush, and then it was one of those signature Brock Purdy off-schedule throws where he found Ricky Pearsall coming back against the grain. And Ricky made the catch. It was a nice throw and it was a nice catch, but Ricky was down for a little bit, just kind of crumpled up, and you could tell that he was in some pain. Walked over to the sideline where the trainers began working on him, and he, at that point, was able to test out his shoulder and come back into practice. I would say 2 or 3 plays later, Ricky Pearsall caught the touchdown for the 49ers. So he was okay. He was chomping at the bit. He was like, hey, clear me, get me back in there. And, just might have felt some pain in his shoulder. Well, we'll have to ask Ricky about it when we have a chance. But that's why I call it a very brief scare, because he immediately proved that he could head right back out onto that practice field and deliver big for San Francisco with the touchdown. Fred Warner today, there was a pretty big hit. Nobody fell down, but a pretty big hit on Kyle Juszczyk, and I thought maybe there might be some words between the two veterans, but it's football, and they were able to move on to the next play like nothing had happened. So Warner, Juszczyk, a lot of 49ers stars involved today, because it was a long practice and they wanted all the guys. I mean, even if a lot of starters don't play on Saturday here at Levi's against the Los Angeles Chargers, they wanted the starters to get the real reps today. They're going to have to start ramping stuff down just for the roster, or the part of the roster that does play at the final practice tomorrow, Thursday. And there's going to be a long layoff for the players who don't play on Saturday, right? So they wanted to get that work in today. So we saw a lot of those carries for McCaffrey. We saw a lot of work for Fred Warner, who remains a really good player. We even saw then some second team work. I mean, Nate Sudfeld, I talked about his 2 interceptions. I guess I have to talk about his touchdown too. This got George Kittle fired up. Found Tariq Owens. This was red zone work. Tariq Owens, a little outbreaker near the pylon. Sudfeld to Owens. Made the catch. George Kittle ran over, celebrated with Tariq. That was a cool moment to see George excited. Then there was a wild play. This wrapped up practice. We saw Robbie Chosen, intended receiver. You couldn't really get a look to see who the DB was, because this was behind a bunch of guys. But DB got his hand in there on a comeback route. Ball popped up into the air, and Jake Tonjes, he might be in the lead for that third tight end spot. We'll see. It's between him and Braden Willis. That this weekend might be big for that on Saturday. Ball popped up in the air. Jake Tonjes made the catch and then just ran with it. It's the second time this month that we've seen a play like that, where there's been a deflection, the ball's popped up in the air, and then a receiver has grabbed it and run. Actually, the third time, because Dominic Pooney caught a deflected pass about a week ago before his injury and ran it in for a touchdown. So we've seen these wild deflections. Remember the Brandon Ayuk play in the stadium behind me in the NFC Championship game against the Lions? Well, similar stuff to that been happening at 49ers practice over the course of this month. All right, moving forward, one more practice this week for the 49ers before the game against the Chargers. It's really heating up when it comes to the roster cut down on August 26th. There are trades happening around the league. The 49ers are interested in trading for a receiver. 49ers might be interested in adding at different positions as well. I think they also have to play a strategic game, because a trade will cost some draft capital or player capital. There are going to be about 1,200 players cut next Tuesday around the entire NFL, which means that, if somebody like Daniel Brunskill, for example, is cut by the Dolphins, do you bring him in as an offensive lineman during this shorthanded time for the interior offensive line? I mean, all of this stuff is going to have to be considered, and it's going to be roster Tetris. You even go up to my Twitter, and you could see on the main page of my Twitter, I pinned it at the top, all of the different things to keep in mind with PUP, NFI, IR, practice squad. And then there's maneuvers that you can do, like the return designation at the roster cut down for injured reserve. The 49ers are going to be taking advantage of every single loophole that they could find, because they've got a lot of injuries. They've got a lot of guys returning, but at different times. Some of them might return a couple weeks into the season. They've got to find a way to fit this onto a 53-man roster with a good 16-man practice squad. And that entire project is really coming to a head here over the course of the next 6 days. So we're viewing everything through that lens. Again, if you want a nice quality 53-man roster projection, that's in greater depth than anybody else is going to give you, give me a thumbs up in the comments section. Let me know exactly what your questions are. I will be responsive to these in these videos, so make sure that you put those in. For now, 49ers Helmet Update signs off. We will talk to you tomorrow.